All right, welcome everybody back to a special edition episode. Believe it or not, this is SIG and KG. We are back on the East West Wrestling Connection podcast. You might be wondering why we're wearing masks, but this is part of our special edition episode here during the mask controversy that we have going on in the world today and our pandemic that we have going on. So we decided to do our favorite some of our current favorite masked wrestlers, and also our greatest from the Attitude Era, which is what we cover. So, Sig, you want to kick things off here and talk about some of your favorite, more current masked wrestlers? There's many of them now.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a great idea. We've actually been on hiatus for a little bit, but we're still trying to get some content out for you guys. So thank you for bearing with us, sticking with us here. But yeah, this was a good idea. I think you said one of our followers actually pitched the idea to you, and I liked it, so we went with it. It's probably going to be a little shorter show than we're used to. We're not recapping any TV shows or pay-per-views or anything. We'll get back to that eventually. But for now, this is going to be a little fun side deal. But like you mentioned, Cage, we want to give out some props to the masked wrestlers of past, present, and the Attitude Era.
Since we all have to wear masks now.
That's right. That's essentially we're an Attitude Era show, so we kind of tried to make our literal top 10 based on that. But a lot of different masked guys throughout the era. For me, Lucha Underground was a huge deal. So much so that I had the friggin' logo tattooed on my bicep. And of course, you see my new background here. I'm in a new studio. So Lucha Underground was awesome. It only made it 4 seasons, but a lot happened in that 4 seasons. It was groundbreaking for television. WWE actually kind of copied what they did during the pandemic off of Lucha Underground style, which was that cinematic type of, it was ahead of its time. Let's just say that. So if you want to check out some great wrestling, try to get your hands on some Lucha Underground. Might be on YouTube, maybe some DVDs, that kind of thing. But some honorable mentions. I think a lot of these guys are still current. So if you're watching AEW or even just the Indies in general, you're probably familiar with this guy, Rey Fenix. I think he's one of the top talents in the world. His AEW booking may not agree with that. However, I think he's one of the top guys in the world. His brother, Pentagon Jr., also in AEW right now. These guys teared it up.
Is that? Let's see the masks. You have Pentagon over your shoulder. It's a really cool mask. I want to see it because he's got one of the coolest masks you could possibly see here.
For sure.
Let's take a look here.
It's Pentagon Jr. He does the skeleton style on the paint job, and then nice little designs here. This is one of his many masks. Same with Phoenix. They always change things up. I have a few others as well. Maybe I'll pop them out as I talk about them. But Phoenix and Pentagon are probably the 2 top masked luchadors in wrestling today, and rightfully so. But of course, there's also Prince Puma from, and now you know him on NXT and Raw as Ricochet. Another top talent. With given the opportunities, he's going to be a star if he's not already. Mil Muertes is a guy who's been around for probably 10, 15, 20 years as Judas Macias, El Messias. He's been a AAA superstar down in Mexico for years. Of course, you see Cage repping him right there.
My head's too big. Yeah, big fan of Mil Muertes myself. You had actually got your hands on this mask for me, and I eagerly accepted it. You had a chance to get some of your masks signed. I do see some other ones behind you that we could talk about a little bit later. There's your Mil Muertes mask, another one that he wore. I think that was like season 2 or 3 that he had that one. This one I believe is season 1 or 2. But anyway, huge fan of that show. To us, it was probably like the most comparable to ECW of anything that we've watched. Of course, there is Prince Puma. I feel like this is turned into a QVC show. So we're looking at these are not for sale. They're not for sale.
So let's see. As I go through my box here, here's another dude, Aerostar, a top high flyer. He was awesome. Underground, a top baby face for sure. Let's see, we have some good ones here. Here's an actual personal favorite of mine. I believe he's doing some work with Ring of Honor right now. El Dragon Azteca Jr. This dude, he's a young superstar, great high flyer. Some of the most unique stuff you're ever going to see. So I'd say go out of your way to watch Rey Horus is what he's going by. It's his ring name before El Dragon Azteca Jr. But we got some good stuff there. Let's see. We have a now he's in NXT, I believe. He's back doing the El Fantasmo Jr. something gimmick, but in Lucha Underground, of course, we know him as King Cuerno, the deer guy, the hunter guy. That's what
He's awesome.
I wasn't a fan of his at first. It took me a little bit to get into him, but Cuerno was definitely a top guy as well. So for Lucha Underground, I think pretty much anybody you want to talk about, and even the unmasked guys too. But unfortunately, this show is not about them. So we'll skip on that stuff. I could talk about Lucha Underground for years. But,
Same here.
of course, we should not forget about the luchadoras. Sexy Star, of course.
Oh, sure. Very controversial figure.
For sure. But well, hey, I think that might be enough for now. We've kind of touched bases on the Lucha Underground.
Another personal favorite there. I see him on the poster behind you. I don't know if you have the mask there. Was Son of Havoc, formerly or currently Matt Cross on the Indies. Really big fan of his. Also on NWA. There he is.
Son of Havoc from the Open Road, biker gimmick. But
big fan.
Matt Cross has been around and killing it on the Indies for, 20 years probably. I remember 2005, 2004, and 2005. First watching Matt Cross, M-Block 20, hell of a superstar. So props to Matt Cross. He's one top talent and still doing great stuff. So only getting better. He's like a fine wine, better with age.
All right, so I guess before we get into our top 10 list here, and once again, this is kind of condensing it down to the Attitude Era, at least, mid to late 90s, looking at these guys. I just wanted to touch on the fact of some of the honorable mentions that did not get covered because these are the kind of the pioneers of the masked division. Of course, the first and foremost would be Mil Mascaras, the most famous luchador wrestler prior to Rey Mysterio, as I hit the stand here. Mr. Wrestling. We have Tiger Mask. There's like Tiger Mask 1 through 10. There's been a million of them. Mr. Wrestling. Super Machine, who was Andre the Giant when he wrestled in Japan under a masked persona. Of course, kind of a local legend, and we had the privilege of meeting Dick the Destroyer Bear. Recently passed away. Also a huge a loss to the wrestling community. The Great Sasuke. Of course, a Japan legend. We're going to touch on Japan. We talked about some of the Mexican luchadors, Mexican wrestlers. Blue Demon, and of course, Blue Demon Jr., who was also on Lucha Underground. Continuing with the Lucha Underground theme, there he is. There's Blue Demon. The QVC continues. We have Dos Caras, who I believe was the father or the uncle of Alberto Del Rio.
Yes.
I think so. And he was Dos Caras 2. El Santo, Mr. Wrestling, I mentioned there's like 1 through 3, and the masked superstar who was also known as Bill Eadie, who played, or I shouldn't say who played, but who was also Axe Demolition. And I wanted to mention Wild or Pegasus Kid, which was Chris Benoit in Japan. If you look up Pegasus Kid versus Black Tiger, you'll see an epic match that is Chris Benoit versus Eddie Guerrero. So as we make our way down the list, those are just a few guys we wanted to mention in the historical side of things, as I like to take a look back at that type of stuff. We're going to go backwards through, so starting with number 10, our favorite masked, or not favorite, but our top kind of talents, also favorites. Number 10, who did we have here? Number 10, do you want to speak briefly? This is a guy who is still currently working in the Indies, I believe, under a slightly different persona.
Well, I believe at some point a few years ago there was a mix-up of the rights went to another guy, so he was going by L.A. Park instead of La Parka. But yeah, number 10 going to be a WCW cruiserweight staple, La Parka, the chairman of WCW. Maybe not the most notable or main event type player when it came to the Attitude Era and WCW, the Monday Night Wars essentially, but still a key part of the cruiserweight division. And the AAA and Latino World Order type thing. He was a big part of that, so I think it's fitting to put La Parka at number 10. I think I like that.
Definitely.
Some good WCW.
Yeah, definitely, and he's still doing it today. So the longevity there, as I talked about, some of our honorable mentions. We're talking about guys that wrestled for like 3 or 4 decades, which is crazy. He's one of those guys that had great longevity. A guy who kind of had his career cut short due to injuries, and then of course his untimely death Known best, I guess, in the States for his work in ECW. I have number 9 at Hayabusa. Hayabusa. What comes to mind? There's a specific match that comes to mind. And you used to have a Hayabusa mask. I don't know what happened to it, but I know you did have one at one time. What are some of your more fond memories of Hayabusa? Rest in peace.
Hayabusa was a pioneer in Japan. He had a very unique style. But if I had to pinpoint one match that really stood out, it's going to be, I believe it was 98, Heatwave 98 ECW. Might have been 97, but a little foggy. But Shinsuke Shinzaki in an epic tag match with RVD, and Sabu, classic match. Really, really awesome ECW style contest. And I think if you wanted to go out of your way to see one of Hayabusa's more famous American matches, that would be the one to pick. But his work in Japan was just absolutely epic, and like I said, very unique style. And unfortunately, very untimely injury. I think he ended up actually breaking his neck doing his famous triple jump moonsault in the ring, and he was just never the same. He was literally paralyzed after that, unfortunately. So the career cut way too short. Hayabusa, absolutely deserving of our top 10 here. Master wrestler.
For some reason, I thought it was the shooting star press that he went for, but maybe it was the triple jump moonsault. Number 8, moving along on the list here, another WCW cruiserweight. Also had spent some time in TNA, I believe, and also WWE with the Mexicools. Number 8, Juventud Guerrero. Juventud Guerrero, another cruiserweight, like I mentioned, a staple of WCW, former cruiserweight champion. Also had a lot of, a decent amount of longevity. Juventud Guerrero, what's some of your more fonder matches? I remember his matches with Chris Jericho being pretty epic.
Yeah, absolutely. Juvi had a hell of a career. He started off for American style. He started off in ECW. A little bit later than your Rey Mysterio guys. They were brought in originally as like the American introduction to Lucha Libre. But then within a year or two, Juvi made his way on the scene. Eventually scooped up by WCW very quickly, just like all those talented dudes. But Juvi, and then he went on to do some great stuff in WWE. Maybe not great stuff, but some good stuff in WWE. With the Mexicools, I think. So he had a good run, real good run throughout pretty much all the top promotions. I think he also did some stuff in TNA. So really, not one match jumps out to me. Like you said, the Jericho stuff was good. I'm always I'm good for some Jericho stuff. But yeah, Juventud Guerrero definitely deserves to be on this list. Yeah, part of the LWO, part of the that epic cruiserweight division of WCW that helped them stand out from the WWF at the time.
Sure, definitely. And keeping the WCW cruiserweight theme and the Mexicool theme, this guy had gotten into some legal trouble more recently, and I feel like if he hadn't, we might still be seeing him on TV because he was, or at least appearances or in the Indies. Is Psychosis, of course, had his epic matches with Rey Mysterio and kind of helping bring Lucha Libre to the United States. Classic mask wrestler, of course. Later on, he had lost the mask and then the crazy hair and stuff. And we have seen him perform live on a few occasions. And yeah, Psychosis. I really don't have much more to say about him. Is there anything else you want to add to the legend of Psychosis?
Well, I think really we talked about a lot of it in the past few episodes because when we were getting into those ECW matches with Rey, then also like I just mentioned, he was a big part of the Lucha Libre introduction to American fans. So I think as far as Lucha Libre and AAA and the Mexican style goes, he's absolutely a legend. But as far as the Attitude Era as a whole, I think he might be a little not as important as some of the guys we'll get into later on. But
sure.
In American wrestling and especially in the Monday Night War era that we covered. So Psychosis again, just an absolutely deserving name to be on this top list. So, but
yes.
Now moves us down the line into number 6, which I think we're going to get a little more Americanized now. This guy had a great career with and without a mask, even as this character. He also did some good stuff without a mask. But Kane, I think Kane is a good character to represent what a masked wrestler could be on the opposite end of Lucha Libre. Not all masked guys are hitting the ropes at 90 miles an hour and flip-flopping around. Kane was a big dude, big imposing figure, Mil Muertes of Lucha Underground. Brought that different style. He had that big strongman style, but agile too. He could, you saw him doing the top rope clothesline and things like that. But a quick world title reign for Kane. So
Sure.
he absolutely, as far as the Monday Night Wars and the Attitude Era goes, I think Kane was a very fitting fit for this list. So, any thoughts on the big man Kane, Cage?
Yeah, well, like you mentioned, he was a world champion during the Attitude Era, although it was only for a day. Also, I'd heard that his final gimmick, of course, and they stuck him with Paul Bearer, when he came out as Kane, but that was going to be his last straw. Believe it or not, that's what I heard. And so, with Isaac Yankem being a failure, and Fake Diesel, none of which was his fault as a character, because I thought he was a pretty strong worker by the time he had gotten to Kane, at least for what he could do. I think he made the most of his abilities, and comparable to the Undertaker. Everybody talks about his size and athleticism. I thought if Kane was probably even bigger and just as athletic, as definitely deserves to be on here. I remember when he first came out, when he ripped the cage door off, which was just crazy. Like, he was just a very intimidating, scary looking mask. He wasn't, a lot of these lucha masks we're talking about are kind of all look the same a little bit, but his mask, we're getting into the more Americanized. He had more of like a leather face, horror figure for a mask, so a little bit different. So staying with the horror theme, or leather face theme here, we'll move on to number 5. Who do we have at number 5?
Number 5, sticking with the Attitude Era, the non Lucha Libre guys, a multiple time world champion and a character that is in the hearts of many. We're gonna go with Mankind. Of course, we've talked about him in past episodes as Cactus Jack. He hasn't made the transformation yet in our linear timeline, but Mankind, a former world champion, and a lot of different characters within the character of Mankind. We went through the corporate Mankind phase, of course, and the demonic ripping out his hair. Uncle Paul, Mankind. I thought that was one of my favorite versions of Mankind. But, as
Definitely.
far as Master Foley goes, Mankind absolutely deserves maybe even to be higher on the list. But as far as we talked about in our pre-production meeting, I think he settled in at number 5. You had mentioned that he had a couple year run Mask, so that's why he kind of is our mid card of this list.
Sure. And as I look at the list too, I realize that just about every guy on this list at one point had lost the mask, or had at least a brief period where they weren't using the mask. Kane, of course, had a long career without the mask. But Mankind, just a very few short years as the Mankind Leatherface, same type of thing when he came out, the crazy look, the more of the horror, the horror character, the horror movie type look to him than some of the Japan and Lucha Libre masks that we've talked about so far. But definitely deserves to be on this list. Probably the most famous mask wrestler, one of the most famous, at least from the Attitude Era. Definitely Mankind, Mick Foley, for sure.
Absolutely. All right.
All
Well,
right, so number 4, go right ahead.
number 4, of course, another WCW stalwart, big into the cruiserweight division. He even had a WWE run. I believe, I think right around WrestleMania 20, he was in for maybe a year or two run. But of course, we're talking about Ultimo Dragon. This is a guy from Japan, also Mexico and Canada. He's been everywhere. I was actually lucky enough to see him wrestle in Canada during my college years, maybe going back 10 years or so now. But Ultimo was a hell of a talent, had some great matches, also with Jericho. But absolutely, I think Ultimo Dragon. Everybody knows the picture of him holding 9 title belts, wearing 2 and his arms draped in the title belts. That's
Sure.
that's a hell of an accolade. Ultimo Dragon had a hell of a career, and I think he's fitting for the top half of our.
Definitely. I can recall his matches in the early 90s in the cruiserweight division, or before there even was a cruiserweight division, in WCW with the likes of Brian Pillman and a few others. I don't know if he had a match with Alex Wright. Didn't really have the long WWE run that I really wanted to see, or any of the real hardcore fans. You never really got to see what he was fully capable. He had got aged a little bit by the time he got to WWF. I think most people remember him for his gaff and at WrestleMania when he fell twice, I think. So I feel like that's what he's most remembered for, and it's too bad because definitely a true pioneer of the cruiserweight division in the '90s and popularizing the masked wrestlers.
Right. I think what happened was they signed him, and Vince just never really got behind him. He signed him thinking he was going to be this, just a whole big star. But like you said, he was already putting on some age by that point. He's towards the tail end of his career. But still good for him that he was able to get paydays. He made a WrestleMania, so. But
Yeah. Yeah, I'm
absolutely.
glad he made it to the main stage, and I think at that point, WWF was actually had a cruiserweight division that they were trying to build up. So they were trying to get some names and trying to get some international notoriety and some fans. They had Tajiri then and Jamie Noble and Kid Cash and those guys, and they were trying to build around them. And I think they made a good choice in Ultimo, even though he was getting a little up there at that point.
Absolutely. All right, moving in now. This is going to be the top three. This is what everybody came here to see. We're getting down to the nitty gritty. I like this one. I debated putting him at number 2. He was always a big favorite, but I think we settled in at number 3. Big Van Vader. Now his mask was very, very small, very tiny actually. If I move out of the way, I have a signed one here, masked and in my little shadow box there. But Vader, even with the skimpy mask, I think it's still a mask, so he's going to make the list. But an absolute legend. Some classic WCW stuff. His stuff with Sting and Ric Flair, absolutely off the charts. I love this WWF run. I wish there was more to it. Apparently, but I'm sure we'll get into this in
Pretty
more.
soon.
But I think Shawn Michaels and those guys kind of got de-pushed before it was actually necessary. I would have loved to have seen him with the WWF World Title run, but unfortunately things didn't work out that way for the big man. But a hell of a legacy and a hell of a career for Big Van Vader. He's our number 3.
Yeah, I feel like if we were doing a popularity contest, he'd probably be our number 1, or at least, like you said, 2. And he might even be a little high for most people now, but former WCW champion, an absolute legend, a great big man, a great worker. Leon White, was it? Without the mask. He also wrestled without the mask a few times, or he'd even take it off sometimes in the middle of the mask, or in the middle of the mask, in the middle of the match. So he'd even, he didn't have a big mask, but he definitely is categorized as a masked wrestler, and I'm glad he's in the top 3.
Absolutely.
Final 2 here. Final 2. Any guesses out there? Any guesses? I'm pretty sure a lot of people know at least one of the names that's still on the list, but.
Sure. Well, honestly, number 2 may surprise a couple people just because his run in the Attitude Era of the Monday Night Wars wasn't so much spectacular. But this one, looking all at his overall career, I think his career spanned maybe 30 to 40 years, and really everywhere. He actually wrestled in NXT. He wrestled in Japan. He's wrestled WCW. We're talking about Jushin Liger. I think he's a very fitting, absolutely just a legend in Japan, and even here in the States as well. So Jushin Liger had a great run in Ring of Honor. They bring him in for time to time. But Jushin Liger, I think, absolutely deserving of our number 2 spot.
Sure, definitely, and he might predate the Attitude Era just a little bit. Of course, his matches with Brian Pillman, and he kicked off the first ever Monday Night Nitro, didn't we? We talked about that. It was him and Pillman the first match, so deservingly so. So he was right at the beginning. Had a long career in TNA and Ring of Honor, like you mentioned, and of course in Japan. He recently retired, which is crazy because he's another guy had a long career. Certainly another one of our favorites, a hidden gem. If you haven't really seen any of his work before, I definitely highly recommend checking it out.
Absolutely. All right, man.
Number 1.
I'll be right back.
Okay, where are you going? I feel like he's gonna have a wardrobe change. I'm gonna bring down one of my masks that I have to show, and wipe some of the dust off it in the meantime. So number 1, who's that jumping out the sky?
Booyaka. Rey Mysterio. 1. I don't think this is going to be a surprise to anybody. Rey Mysterio is just an absolute legend. Anywhere he went, he's a top guy, top name. He essentially brought Lucha Libre to the States. Following the Libre experiment, he was definitely the guy that most pushed. But Psychosis was legendary before he got here. Rey Mysterio, no question about it, number 1 wrestler of all time.
Sure, definitely, and definitely has the titles and the longevity Recently lost an eye, however, very unfortunate. Or both eyes, actually, I think it was. Yeah, so I can actually have a mask that I can show that I got signed. Rey Mysterio 619, one of the coolest signatures
Yeah.
in the business. A very nice signature. Of course, his mask and his look is the one you have there. Very distinct. Very you know it's Rey Mysterio when you see it, type of thing. So he is our number one. He has won a belt pretty much on every continent. He started wrestling at like 15 years old. We just covered some of his stuff recently in the recent episodes with ECW. So there's no doubt about it. It's a no-brainer who number one was. It's just kind of the number, the guys in between wherever they fell. Everyone else falls under Ray, who's still going strong, and got to be well into his 40s right now, and a long career. It's funny because as we look at these masked wrestlers, they've all had long careers except for maybe one or two guys. La Parka is still wrestling. Which is crazy. Kane is kind of semi-retired. Mankind was recently retired, maybe sort of. Ultimo, Vader, of course, was a little bit older, a little bit heavier. Hayabusa was a young guy when he passed away. But it's just crazy the longevity of these guys with the mask. It's almost like that gives them some kind of special powers, like Mil Muertes with his man of 1,000 deaths.
To go along with that, though, really, it is shocking too because a lot of these guys are that lucha libre style, and it's not an easy
Yeah,
style. A lot of hitting the ropes, a lot of flipping and flying. So it takes a toll on you. But a lot of these guys have some good time into their careers, so that's a testament to the work they've done. But yeah, absolutely, Rey Mysterio number one. Hopefully you guys dug us on this top 10 list. Hopefully you agreed. But if not, shoot us an email, shoot us a comment on Facebook, Instagram, wherever. And
it's
you're
quite
even on YouTube.
possible.
Check the show
Sure,
out.
it's quite possible that we have forgotten somebody. I do see somebody over your shoulder who's on your shoulder that should at least get a little bit mention of the show. Your other shoulder, your other side. Well, he's on that shoulder, but he's also on the wall. Yeah, there we go. Come on, you got to at least mention El Generico, of course, one of our favorite masked wrestlers from more recent times of Ring of Honor. Well, not so recent. You might know him as Sami Zayn now in WWF. I can't or WWE. I'm sorry.
It did come as no surprise. Actually, I should have mentioned him at the top of the show in our honorable mentions. But
Sure.
yeah, El Generico was probably one of my favorite gimmicks of the early 2000s. His stuff in PWG and Ring of Honor, of course, with Kevin Steen, just absolutely brilliant stuff. Honestly, I'm not a huge fan of what they've done with him as Sammy, but you could say that about almost anybody when it comes to the WWE booking of these guys. They all have phenomenal careers, and then they get signed, which is great for them and their families. But as a fan, you kind of just got to go with it, roll with it. WWE guy. But, no, El Generico, absolutely. I love him. I have a tattoo of him, just like everybody else I love. So yeah, El Generico gets a special honorable mention away from the other honorable mentions.
Definitely. Absolutely. And I'm sure there's lots of guys that we have forgotten, but like I said, drop a comment when we drop this episode. Kind of an impromptu episode for you guys during this pandemic. We hope everybody's being safe and being smart out there. And hopefully we won't have to wear these masks too much longer. I know because this one's driving me nuts right now. But Sig, want to put on the final touches here on this special episode?
Yeah, I think really we were wrapping it up already, but I think like you said, the mask style, the mask persona on a wrestler it's very unique and it's a great it adds a lot to a character. Some people say a mask takes away from a character because you can't see the facials or this or that. So I guess that's arguable. That's another thing you could leave with a comment on. Do you think of the masked wrestlers who have been unmasked, do you prefer them in that style or not? For me, I like a mask. I think it adds to a character and really definitely adds to merchandise sales. I think there's always money to be made if you make replica masks. Obviously, I own 500 of them, so they've gotten their money's worth out of me. But I think that's going to wrap it up for us. Stick with us. Like I said, there's been a little hiatus when it comes to getting the actual show checked out. A little real life is coming, in the way a little bit, but that's bound to happen once in a while. So stick with us. We still have some content for you, and we'll be back to the regular show format very soon. But yeah, that wraps it up for us. I thank you for your support, everybody. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode. Until next time, for Mill Gallagher, Mill CD, whatever you want to call him. I was Ray Sig Phoenix. Now I'm Ray Sig Stereo. But that's going to do it for us. So for the East West Wrestling Connection podcast, AG, you're staring at me, man. All right, we're going to wrap it up. Thanks again, guys. We'll talk to you soon.